The views and opinions of this broadcast do not reflect the views and opinions of Armed Media, UNU Productions, and its affiliates. Enjoy the show.
Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to Armed Radio on Tuesday night. That means you're here with Daniel Sanders and Rod Burks on 2AT Second Amendment Talk. Rod, how you doing this evening?
Man, it's the best day of my life. Thanks for asking. And I want to send a big happy birthday out to all of the Marines out there who just celebrated their 244th day. And thank all of the veterans who have and currently are still serving in uniform.
Absolutely, yes. It was a great birthday for me. Didn't do a whole lot of traditional celebrating in Marine Corps fashion, but my best friend from the Marine Corps, his little sister, did get married on November the 10th, and I had the honor and privilege of being the DJ at her wedding for the reception. So that was celebration enough for me in and of itself. And then Veterans Day was more of a somber day, because took my mother up to Chattanooga National Cemetery to see my father's grave. But you know, it was still a great day. It was a beautiful day. The weather was excellent, unlike today. But yeah, so we're going to roll right into it as we do at the start of every show. Big shout out to all the troops out there, men and women deployed overseas and serving on the home front. Y'all are doing a great job. Keep up the good work. Come home safe. We're all rooting for you back here at home. We got a really big topic to discuss that just came up today, just popped up today. The Supreme Court passed a ruling today basically blocking Remington from appealing the decision that would allow the families of children and staff members killed at Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newtown, Connecticut. Remington filed an appeal to prevent them from filing lawsuits against them, and the Supreme Court shot it down today. So the families are allowed to go forward with their lawsuit against Remington in that case. And this sets a very dangerous precedent. Very, very huge precedent. Of course, back in 2005, Congress filed the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act. And if you don't know what that is, it's a law which protects firearms manufacturers and dealers from being held liable when crimes have been committed with their products. It goes on to say, however, both manufacturers and dealers can still be held liable for damages resulting from defective products, breach of contract, criminal misconduct, and other actions which they are directly responsible in much the same manner as any U.S.-based manufacturer of consumer products is held responsible. They may also be held liable for negligent entrustment when they have reason to know a gun is intended for use in a crime. So again, as I said, this sets a dangerous precedent.
And you know, Daniel, I read a little bit more about it. It was saying that essentially what the lawsuit is for isn't necessarily that it's their product, but it was that they marketed to individuals that, oh, well, this is how you kill your enemies.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen exactly what they're referring to. In fact, you know, I don't see a lot of advertisements for Remington myself. But I think that really what we're doing is you know, this lawsuit deflects away from the real issue, which is mental illness. You know, they're trying to blame an inanimate object, and in doing so, they're not going to protect people, and they're not going to make anybody any safer.
I agree. And you know, this is what I mean. when I say this sets a dangerous precedent. So if we allow the families of people that have been killed by mass shooters to sue the guns manufacturers, well, now it sets the precedent that, my family can file a lawsuit against Anheuser-Busch or Fiat Chrysler if I decide to go out and get drunk and get a DUI and kill myself or somebody else.
But you drive a Fiat?
Well, I drive a Chrysler 300. The company is Fiat Chrysler.
I was going to silently judge you on the radio, but no, it's cool.
I mean, hey, a Fiat 500, it's not my style, but I've ridden in them, and they're actually pretty roomy in there.
Yeah, wasn't there a commercial Charlie Sheen driving one inside the house while he's on house arrest or something a long time ago? Anyway, okay, so there are redeeming qualities, I guess is my point. But to caveat off what you were saying about, it was the Connecticut Supreme Court that is a couple of representatives commented. It says for years, gun manufacturers have been allowed to operate with near blanket immunity, producing weapons of war, marketing them to the masses with zero accountability. So I think there is the strategy that they're trying to exploit is the marketing firearms and not necessarily because for people who aren't familiar, I actually had to refresh myself. The Sandy Hook shooter had actually killed his mother, who was the gun enthusiast, and then took the gun to the school and killed 20 children, and I believe it was 6 staff members. I'm not sure how many were wounded. But he had been diagnosed with Asperger's and OCD. And really this boils down to something I've said before. It's all about, it's about accountability. I mean, there's layers of protection. If you're a gun owner, you need to prevent unauthorized users from having access to them. That includes the ammunition. That includes the guns. Whether they're diagnosed with a mental illness or not. So the fact that they're going after the manufacturer leads me to believe that this is more about making money, a financial gain, than it is about protecting people.
Right. Now I'm sitting here looking on the Protection of Lawful Commerce and Arms Act. I'm looking at their page on Wikipedia, and it has a list of all of these different attempted lawsuits since this has been passed, and it says, in October 2016, a Connecticut Superior Court judge dismissed a lawsuit filed by the families of some victims in the 2012 Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting against the manufacturer, Remington, the wholesale distributor, and the retailer of the semi-automatic rifle used in the shooting. Judge Barbara Bellis ruled that the suit, quote, falls squarely within the broad immunity, end quote, provided to gun manufacturers and dealers by the Protection of Lawful Commerce and Arms Act. However, on March 14, 2019, the Connecticut Supreme Court reversed the lower court's ruling, allowing plaintiffs to continue their suit against Remington. And I agree wholeheartedly with Judge Bellis in her ruling, because Remington manufactured the gun. It's my understanding that unless you have a really good connection, I don't think Remington themselves actually retails to the civilian populace. I think you have to be a wholesale buyer, a licensed wholesale buyer, to purchase from a manufacturer like Remington.
Right, and the gun by itself, unless you club somebody with it, isn't going to hurt anybody. So you've also got the manufacturer of the brass, you've got the primer, you've got the powder, and you've got the projectile. So are all of these entities also equally culpable in the killing? And I'm not trying to take away from the tragedy of the event, but I hear the term used loosely that we need common sense gun control. Well, if common sense was a common virtue, we wouldn't be having this discussion.
Absolutely. it goes on to say, after the 2012 Aurora, Colorado and Sandy Hook, Connecticut shooting incidents, a renewed effort has been mounted to repeal the Protection of Lawful Commerce and Arms Act to make it possible for victims of gun violence to sue firearms manufacturers and dealers on a broader array of grounds. Again, we're stepping into that realm of setting a dangerous precedent.
Yeah, I mean, I want to file a lawsuit against Jose Cuervo because, man, he's made me do some really dumb stuff, and the headaches he's caused me have been unbearable at times.
Yeah, I mean, I want to file lawsuits against Taco Bell and Waffle House because I've probably gained 30 pounds in the last 4 months.
Right.
I want to file a lawsuit on behalf of my mother for all of these candy makers for her diabetes. I mean,
yeah. Where do we draw the line?
Exactly.
Where is this? I mean, really, if common sense were the case, then we wouldn't need laws, right? And people wouldn't drive like maniacs through school zones. People wouldn't take guns into places and shoot innocent people. I mean, again, that's why you have laws, because you can't count on common sense.
Exactly. So I have an article here from CNBC talking about the decision made today by the Supreme Court. It says the families sued the makers of the gun that was used, an AR-15 style weapon made by Remington in 2014, alleging that the company's marketing of the weapon inspired Adam Lanza to commit the massacre. So the article says that very paragraph right there tells you who is at fault. And it's not Remington. Plain and simple, it's not Remington. It is Adam Lanza. He committed the massacre.
Yeah. He 20-year-old a male, and it's unfortunate that this happened. But why was it allowed to go on for so long? I mean, and I've used this example before. Dave Grossman talks about in the last 50 years in the United States, how many children had died in a fire at school. 50 years, United States, children died in a fire in school. And the answer is 0. Because they have multiple layers of protection. You have redundancies. Why not have more I guess first responders, armed responders, there on the school grounds. Resource officers are a good start, but that's one person. Why not allow educators who were qualified and choose to carry? Why don't they have doors that lock down? At the hit of a button. All the magnets released and the doors are shut. Why not? Why not have multiple layers of protection to protect children from shooters? Like you do with fires. Everything in a school is built to be flame resistant or to not burn at all. The batteries in the exit signs will last long after the little human has left the planet. They got sprinklers, there's alarms, they do drills. You see what I'm saying? You have to take the same response to an active shooter. You can't just rely on people's common sense or to police themselves.
Right. Now, this next paragraph that I'm reading here says, an exception in the law provided in cases where the gun manufacturer knowingly violated the law through its marketing practices paved the way for the families to launch their suit. They claim that Remington marketed the weapon, quote, as a highly lethal weapon designed for purposes that are illegal, namely killing other human beings, end quote. Now, as you said earlier, I have never seen a Remington advertisement. I've never, with the exception of watching, just flipping through the channels and accidentally landing on some hunting show or something, I have never seen any type of firearm advertisement anywhere on TV. With the exception of looking through gun magazines or anything like that, I've never seen any type of advertisement for any kind of firearm. But what advertisements I have seen I've never seen an advertisement that made me think, hey, I can use this thing to go kill a bunch of people.
Yeah, and what really kind of bothers me is that politicians are jumping on this bandwagon as a way to control people. And I was reading the Wikipedia a link about Sandy Hook, and they even talk about video games and how the state attorney didn't make any link between video games and a motive for the shooting. But the report for the Child Advocate said that video games and internet addiction appear to be highly comorbid with several other psychiatric disorders, including anxiety, depression, and obsessive-compulsive challenges, which the shooter did have a diagnosis of OCD from the time, I think you said earlier, he was like 16, 14 years old whenever he was diagnosed with it. So it's not Remington's bag to carry, is my point.
Yeah, exactly. The next paragraph reads, the Connecticut Supreme Court ruled in a divided opinion earlier this year that the family members could pursue their lawsuit, rejecting Remington's argument. The court wrote that the family members are, quote, entitled to have the opportunity to prove their wrongful marketing allegations, end quote. Now, that part I do agree with. I do feel that if they think they have grounds to merit a lawsuit or anything like that, then absolutely give them the opportunity to try and explain their position on it. Try, because now, according to that, the burden of proof is now on the family members. The burden of proof is not on Remington; it's on the family members to say, yes, Remington's marketing campaign made this weapon appear the ideal use for mass shootings, and that's what led him to purchase. He didn't even purchase the weapon. He pretty much stole the gun from his mother.
Right, and that makes him the criminal. Why hold an inanimate object responsible, or the manufacturer of an inanimate object? You're right.
Exactly. So it goes on to say the Supreme Court's move will allow the lower court's decision to stand, potentially opening the door to more lawsuits from victims of gun crime. Remington warned that such a decision would eviscerate protections provided for by Congress. That's pretty much what I've been saying this whole time. Sets a dangerous precedent.
Right, I mean, I understand. And it's not even all the families. It says in the article I was reading that 9 of the families are pushing this class action lawsuit, and I agree. I think everybody should have a day in court. If you really feel that you've been slighted or somehow unjustly denied your life, liberty, or pursuit of happiness, then yeah, you should get your day in court. But I don't think it should come at the expense of others' freedoms.
I agree, and I'm going to go on ahead and call it right now. I don't think the families have any evidence that would sway a court's decision if that court is looking at it from an unbiased standpoint.
Well, I mean, realize though that Remington is a huge corporation and they're smart. They're probably going to try to settle out of court because they're in the job of making money, right? I mean, that's their job. So if they need to pay the families whatever compensation they feel is due that they can agree on, I think they would much rather settle it out of court instead of have this public fiasco of people who are both gun advocates and your Second Amendment supporters.
Yeah, and I'll say this right now. The listeners out there that don't agree with me, they can call me a dick, they can call me an asshole, whatever. If they do reach a settlement, if Remington goes to the families and says, we're willing to settle this out of court, and the families take any dollar amount, then the families don't give two shits about gun laws. I'm going to go even further on to say they really don't care about their family members. All they cared about was money from the get-go.
Well, and you know, I maybe a little crass, but you know, I try to put myself in other people's shoes whenever I'm trying to consider where they're coming from, and you know, I'd be mad as hell. You know, I've got kids in school, or well, at least one still in school, and you know, she tells me about you know, they read a book about, you know, active shooters, and they have active shooter drills, which are all well and good. But if, you know, if my child was the victim of one of these things, yeah, I'm gonna want justice somehow, some way. And you know, I would much rather have my children than any dollar amount. You see what I'm saying? And no dollar amount would ever replace the lives of any of my children. So I mean, I don't know that saying, hey, you know, if they take the money, they don't care, but you know, I mean, it's a class action. You know, it's a group. So you know, one or two of them may be like, no, forget the money. I want blood. No pun intended. But yeah, it's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, and I get what you're saying. But you know, I mean, and again, just like you, I would try to put myself in that same position. If my goal here was to try and have stricter gun laws, if I felt Remington really was responsible for this, and I really wanted to make sure that this didn't happen again, no dollar amount could silence me. You could offer me every dollar your company has made over the last 50 years, and I would not be satisfied. We're still going to court. Because I don't feel this is about money. I feel this is about making sure this doesn't happen to somebody later on down the road. I don't want another parent to experience what I've been through. That's me putting myself in their shoes.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you. And I think that you know, until you've walked a mile in those shoes, though, you can't really make a statement that, you know, they don't care. And I'm not saying that I don't agree with you. I'm just saying that, you know, I think that, you know, there may come a point where they realize that, hey, maybe they can use this, use their powers for good and not evil. You know.
Yeah. And that could very well be, but I mean, that's just. Again, this is just my 2 cents, my opinion from the outside looking in. Yeah, I really don't. I just, like I said, if it was me, no dollar amount could silence me. If my goal was, I want stricter gun laws and I want to make sure this doesn't happen to another family down the road, no dollar amount could silence me. Don't even bother trying to come at me with an offer.
Okay, so let me ask you this: you've served your country overseas. You carried a gun for your country, and you've lost friends. Now, do you blame the organization? Do you blame the individuals? I mean, because those friends of yours are also somebody's child. You know, that's somebody's son, daughter, husband, wife. You know, brother, sister. And I've got a point to this, but yeah, no, tell me, who do you blame?
That's actually a really good question. No, I don't blame the gun manufacturer. I don't blame the government. I don't blame the organization. I don't even blame, in most cases, I don't blame the individual. You know, but I blame it on, I guess really I blame it on human nature. Because
exactly, you know, I mean, there's an ideation, and even like some sub categories of an idea. You know, that's really the enemy. The enemy is an idea, is a concept that somebody's come up with that, hey, you know, this is good, that's bad. I mean, nothing is ever as black and white as it seems. You know, I mean, there's, you know, it's all these different shades of gray that. I guess it depends on which one's closest to home, the one that you know you see through your lens.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, but I don't know. Like you said, it's all different shades of gray. There's really no black and white here, but there's a little bit of black and white. And the black and white that I'm seeing is we have a provision that protects gun manufacturers from being sued because of somebody else's negligence.
While this is true, I mean, nothing, even in the Constitution, nothing is absolute. Right? I mean, because the Constitution says, you know, you have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Well, you know, people are executed all the time for you know, murders and whatnot. So you know, why would the protection of a company supersede the protection of a life? Do you see what I'm saying? I mean, and I guess the point I'm trying to make here is that due process is the only thing that's really guaranteed. And as long as we have that due process, as long as Remington's giving fair due process and the family gets their you know, to make their argument in front of a judge, then I think justice is served. Just my opinion. I mean, regardless of what protections may be there, like okay, yeah, these are general, but they're saying that they marketed something to this individual that created this. I think that's going to be a really steep hill to climb and to prove. But if they can, then hey, good on them.
Yeah, and I think you know, I think for next week's show, I think what I want to do is I want to get in touch with somebody from Remington and their marketing campaign, and you know, hey, I know that, talk to them and say, hey, you know, I realize that this has been, you know, almost a decade ago, but surely to God, y'all still have marketing tools and everything that you used from that time period on file. Can you send me something that maybe would have, you know, given credence to these people to say, okay, we think this is what led to him thinking that he can use this to commit a mass crime, a mass shooting? That's basically what I want to see, Remington's marketing tools from that time period.
Right, and you know, I doubt they'd give it up, especially in the middle of you know, all that's going on, because I'm sure that their lawyers and marketing guys, so that, you know, I'm sure there's a shitstorm going on up at the headquarters at Remington, you know, going through, you know, files and whatnot. And I forgot what I was going to say. Man, hold on, it'll come back to me.
Getting that old timer's disease.
Yeah. So yeah, but again, I think that what we're doing though is unfair to those that basically are the real people who suffer. I mean, people with mental illness are really the ones that have been kind of marginalized by them going after Remington for their ad. You know, instead of putting the focus on people who, you know, may need help or special attention. I mean, obviously he was, but he didn't get the help that really made a difference. You know, to trigger him to do this, I don't think it was a commercial he saw. I really don't. I mean, they got video games out there called Kindergarten Killers. I mean, come on. Where do we draw the line and say, okay, you know, we need to take responsibility for the human condition?
Right. So this is from the Wikipedia page talking about the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting. It says, in a 2013 interview, Peter Lanza, Adam Lanza's father, said he suspected his son might have also suffered from undiagnosed schizophrenia. And I say also because there's more to it. He was diagnosed with Asperger's. He was diagnosed with OCD. He was prescribed the antidepressant Celexa. And it says he took the medication for 3 days, and then his mother, Nancy, reported on the third morning he complained of dizziness. By that afternoon, he was disoriented. His speech was disjointed. He couldn't even figure out how to open his cereal box. He was sweating profusely, all of this stuff.
Man.
and he never took the medication again.
Sorry, I should be joking at this time. My time is terrible. I digress.
But it says he also suffered from undiagnosed schizophrenia in addition to his other conditions. Lanza said that family members might have missed signs of the onset of schizophrenia and psychotic behavior during his son's adolescence because they mistakenly attributed his odd behavior increasing isolation to the Asperger syndrome. Because of concerns that published accounts of Lanza's autism could result in a backlash against others with a condition, autism advocates campaigned to clarify that autism is a brain-related development disorder rather than a mental illness. Lanza demonstrated in the shooting is generally not seen in the autistic population, and none of the psychiatrists he saw detected troubling signs of violence in his disposition.
Right. So I guess the point that I think this really sends home is that, you know, you've got policymakers who are saying, oh, well, you know, if a gun looks like this, and this, it is an assault rifle, and it must be bad, and it should be banned. But they can't even really say with any degree of certainty what this young man suffered from. I mean, they know what he was diagnosed with, but I think there's absolutely a stigma associated with mental health and psychiatry. I don't profess to know any of it. I just know that if I go to the VA and I tell them X, Y, and Z, then I'm getting put on a list somewhere, and I'm never going to be allowed to own a firearm. So you know, you either learn to game the game, or you go, you commit fully to it, and if that's the route you want to go, best of luck to you. Just my thought.
Yeah. I've been sitting here reading further on this article. It says, investigators found Lanza was fascinated with mass shootings, such as the Columbine High School massacre, the Virginia Tech shooting, and the Northern Illinois University 2008 shooting. Among the clippings found in his room, there was a story from the New York Times about a man who shot at school children in 1891. His computer contained 2 videos of gunshot suicides, movies that showed school shootings, and 2 pictures of Lanza pointing guns at his own head. It was also claimed that he had edited Wikipedia articles about mass murderers. This only came to light after Lanza died because he never permitted others to access his bedroom, including his mother. Lanza had also taped over the windows with black plastic garbage bags to block out sunlight. He had cut off contact with both his father and brother in the 2 years before the shooting, and at one point communicated with his mother, who lived in the same house, only by email. A document titled Selfish, about the inherent selfishness of women, was found on Lanza's computer after his death. Now, call me crazy, but those, I think, are signs. That's a little bit more than, you know, a young man who's just wanting privacy. That's taking it just a bit too far. If, you know, I'm not talking to any of my family members except one, and even then that's only through email, then yeah, I'm, you know, if I'm that family member from the outside looking in, I'm thinking there's a little bit more going on than just, you know, like I said, a young man who wants his privacy.
Yeah, but you know, I've never raised a child that had any kind of special needs, and I wouldn't, you know, I had enough trouble with my kids. There were times when they would text me from the other room, so you know, I hear that and I kind of laugh, but I mean, I don't know that you know, if in the same situation, I don't know that I would have, and you know, I mean, I would like to think that I would have been more responsible, not allowed them access to my firearms at all. But yeah, it does sound like you know, the fact that she had firearms in the house and all of these signs, these red flags, were blatantly obvious to investigators. You know, I mean, somebody who lived in the home should have seen it, you know, and known. She should have had, you know, any gun that wasn't in use, very safely secured, and especially the ammunition to it. I mean, if you're using a firearm for home protection, you don't need, several magazines. If you just need something to get you past the excuse me, past the threat.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I've been in relationships with people before who their children. I dated a woman one time who her son, he was 18 years old. He did have Asperger's syndrome, and yeah, he never. I mean, if anything, he actually hated being alone. He could not stand being alone for an extended amount of time. I'm just, I don't know, maybe the mother was distracted with something else. I mean, it does say, in the weeks before the killings, Lance's mother was considering moving him to another town. She planned to purchase a recreational vehicle for him to stay in so that potential purchasers could see the house without disturbing him. So I don't know. Like I said, maybe she was, preoccupied and.
Yeah, but that really doesn't absolve her or excuse her actions, and yeah, it's tragic that her life was taken also by the shooter, and I wonder, if she were still alive, would she be the subject of this lawsuit instead of Remington? I mean, I understand you can't get blood from a turnip, so there probably wouldn't be a whole lot of benefit. But I'm curious if criminal charges would have been brought against her.
Yeah, of course, all we can do now is speculate on that. But I would like to touch, you did say if you had been in that situation, you would like to think that you would have been more responsible gun owner and would have kept your firearms locked away. I just can't help but wonder now, and again, we're speculating. Had his mother owned a gun safe that he did not have access to, did not have access to any of the firearms, if he was hell-bent on wanting to cause a massacre like this, what would have stopped him from... Really, what would have stopped him? I mean, if he didn't use a gun, he could have used a car.
Oh, yeah. Timothy McVeigh didn't use a gun, and he created way more casualties in Oklahoma City than were caused at Sandy Hook.
Yeah, exactly. And that's my point. Somebody who's hell-bent on causing a massacre such as this, if you take the liberal approach to this, nobody can have a gun. You take Australia's approach to this. We're going to take all guns and we're going to make it impossible for anybody to own a gun. Okay, well, all the guns in the world have been destroyed. I no longer have access to a gun. Well, hell, I'm just going to hop in my car and go drive it through a building and see how many people I can take out. Or I'm going to go down to the hardware store and get some steel pipe and some nails and some gunpowder and some fuses.
Right. I mean, Timothy McVeigh used ammonium nitrate and inflicted 168 confirmed deaths and one possible additional. I'm not sure possible additional means. But, yeah, I mean, he's a domestic terrorist, a serial killer. So was the shooter. You don't hold everybody else hostage. You don't punish everybody else for the crimes, negligence, and criminal mindset of a few.
Tell that to my drill instructors.
I was just thinking the exact same thing. I was like, but we do it in the Marine Corps all the time. Nobody gets to go out on liberty because one idiot got a DUI. Like, oh, really? And maybe that's why I'm so I guess not strict. I can't think of the word I'm thinking of. So adamant about protecting our rights, because I've seen what happens when you punish the many for the crimes of a few.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, it's just, you've seen it, I've seen it. I'm sure at some point, every one of our listeners has seen it at some point. Whether it's like you said, Lance Corporal Schmuckatelli got a DUI Tuesday night, so there's not going to be any weekend liberty. Friggin' this individual drove his forklift into this shelving unit at work, and now we're all going to have to work overtime this weekend to make up for this. Just whatever the case may be. We've turned into a society of punishing the many for the actions of a few.
Yeah, and there's, I get it. I truly do. I understand that maybe initially you want to get your hands wrapped around something so you control it, but it's for example, those that were alive on September 11, 2001, they remember, that basically any forms of transportation, public transportation, airplanes, everything was ceased. Like you weren't flying anywhere. And everybody was scared to take a bus and whatnot, trains, all of that done. But it was quickly, turned back on, because they don't want to keep people paralyzed with fear. I think the left's best tool, and the tool they use most often, is emotion. When you allow emotions to rule and make decisions, you're in for bad politics.
Yeah, I agree. And that's the whole thing. Like you said, they act off emotion. They act. I've seen so many videos where somebody is interviewing some Joe Schmo at a rally, and their basic stance is whether it's factually right or not is irrelevant as long as it's morally right. They don't care about logic and fact. All they care about is it the right thing to do? I can't speak for you. Me personally, I don't care what's morally right. I care about what's right. Especially if it's based on fact and logic. Logically speaking, factually speaking, if it's correct, that's how it is. Just because you don't agree with it, it violates your moral opinion, doesn't matter. What matters is fact and logic.
Yeah, I agree with that. And there's I just like what's his name, Maslow, the hierarchy of needs. What's the word I'm looking for? The guy's name. Anyway, I'll think of it at like 2:00 in the morning. I'll be like, that's where it was, and then I'll log back in, and nobody will be listening. But anyway, there's absolutely there's got to be a hierarchy in making decisions and things like that. As long as it's well thought out and like you said, based on fact, and it isn't just somebody's emotional knee-jerk reaction. I almost buy gut instinct over knee-jerk reaction, but like 9/11, 2001, it may have been a knee-jerk reaction to ground all the flights, but it was. I think it was probably necessary until they could get their hands wrapped around what had just happened and figure out a way ahead.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. It's a matter of, okay, somebody just used our own transit system to cause a terroristic attack on us. So we're going to put a stop to that temporarily. You know, kind of the same way as what Donald Trump first tried to do with his travel ban when he was first elected. You know, all of these terrorists are funneling into the country because we're letting them come in. So this is where they're primarily coming from. We're not going to allow people from this area to come over here until we get this matter sorted out.
Right, and I don't know. There's a show on TV. I don't know if you've seen it. It's called 90 Day Fiance. Don't judge me. But I guess this woman, she goes to Lebanon to marry this guy from Syria, and then she comes back to the United States and learns that because of the travel ban, he's not allowed here. I don't know if whatever resolved from that or not, but I realize how it can affect people's lives, but it's the government has. It has to have authority to make laws and enforce laws, and I understand that there probably are people who need to be denied certain liberties. Your major, the people who are mentally defective, people who are enemies of freedom. But how do you know whenever you know what I mean? I guess the question is because somebody could listen to this broadcast and say, "Oh, well, this is they could be plotting to overthrow the federal government because they feel the right's been taken." That's not the case at all. I feel that we need to bring awareness to the erosion of our rights and fight them. The right way, like making sure we're electing officials that have our rights in mind and people who are sympathetic to the cause and understand that we don't want our guns because we want to be criminals. We don't want to be criminals because we have guns.
Yeah. I have, if you look at all of the arguments that they've given, all throughout the years, Columbine, they blamed it on violent video games and violent music. I grew up playing games like Medal of Honor, Grand Theft Auto. I grew up listening to Marilyn Manson and Disturbed. I never
Alice in Chains,
yeah, Alice in Chains. I never once, the thought never even crossed my mind. And I was picked on a lot in school. The thought never once crossed my mind to go and shoot up the school. There were a couple of people that I wanted to kick the ever-loving shit out of. Absolutely. I did have I won't call it a hit list, but I will call it a ass-beating list. But,
Maslow is the name I was looking for. Thanks to our one listener.
But yeah, I did have a list of a couple of individuals that if I ever saw them in a back alley somewhere, they were going to wonder what hit them in the back of the head. But yeah, I never once, despite listening to all of these violent songs and playing all these violent video games, I never once had any inkling of a thought to go and commit an atrocity such as a school shooting.
And that's common sense, right? Just because you have these thoughts of it doesn't necessarily make it real. But if we're not careful and we don't defend our rights, thoughts will become crimes. I mean, like, I've and I haven't read too much or researched, so I don't know how much of it is legit. But essentially, in the UK, people who are considered far right can be arrested for posting their political opinions or views on public social media, and being arrested or charged with essentially crimes of thought.
And that, now talking about that, I'm going to pose this question to you because I think I already know what your response will be. So if there ever comes a day that our government enacts a law saying that it is now illegal to own any kind of firearm, would you consider yourself, would you consider the idea that you would take the stance of a criminal at that point?
I mean, by definition, if the United States government woke up and said, all right, if you own a firearm, you're a criminal, then yeah, I'm a criminal. Because I own firearms. And I'm not hip to the idea that, you're going to send armed men and women to take away my arms because you think arms are bad. See that the hypocrisy in that? I mean, if the government can have it, right? And I'm a rational man. I understand we can't have our own B-1 bombers and nuclear warheads and MLRS and all those kind of artillery pieces. As much as I would love to have one, or a combination thereof, I understand why. We can't have those, but to say that small arms are make you too dangerous against a government that has tanks and helicopters, attack helicopters, missiles, drones, you name it. I mean, let me keep my little blankie to help me feel safe at night, so I can sleep better. While you have the fate of the world at your fingertips.
Yeah. I'll come right out and say it. If the government ever outlaws weapons, then I will at that time become an outlaw, because I'm thinking of a line from the movie The Rock when Ed Harris first gets his men in place and they've taken over Alcatraz, and he goes on to say, for what we're doing, we're going to be branded terrorists. A couple hundred years ago, a couple of men by the name of George Washington and Jefferson Adams and all these guys, they were branded terrorists by the British. And now today we call them patriots. And that's the position that I would take if that day were to ever come.
Right, and I agree with that, but at the same time, I think we have a responsibility to not let it go down that road, and that's to operate within the system as effectively as we can. And maybe that's just the officer in me, trying to sugarcoat my own shit so it tastes better. But I'm not giving up on the system. I think it's probably the best system going. I agree it can be better, and I don't like everybody else's opinion, or not everybody else's opinion, but there's a lot of opinions I don't agree with, and that's okay. It's okay to disagree. It's okay to not share somebody's perspective, but it's not okay in my opinion, to take away somebody else's rights. I mean, if they say turn in your guns, I'm going to civilly disobey. I've got a heavy foot. I go over the speed limit. Sometimes, a lot of times. I don't consider myself a criminal. I'm just a dude among dudes.
Yeah, I agree. So we're going to leave it there. We're running short on time. Take the opportunity to real quick to plug our Facebook page, 2AT-Second Amendment Talk. Go on there, like us, follow us, interact with us, and give us your opinion on it. We want to hear your opinion on this. If I think, and this is the question I'll pose: do you think the Newtown, Connecticut families, the families that are involved in this lawsuit, do you think their case holds merit? That's the question that I would pose to you. I want to hear your responses on that. So go on the Facebook page, like us, follow us, and let us know what you think. Also, don't forget to tune in on Monday nights at 10:30 Eastern to listen to my show with Donnie J, Two Beards Talking. And listen to us riff and just spit a lot of bullshit about what's just happening in the world today. I don't think I got anything else. Rod, you got anything?
Man, no, great talking to you, and yeah, I absolutely hope we get some interaction from some of our listeners. Yeah, I think you're getting tired of listening to my same spiel, so maybe we get some other people on the show. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. As a matter of fact, I think we might even hold a little contest on our Facebook page. So keep an eye out for that in the near future, and we'll see about getting one of our lucky winners on here to riff and raff with us. So again, a happy Veterans Day and a happy 244th to all the Marines out there. And to all the men and women serving overseas and on the home front, we appreciate everything that you're doing. Come home safe. This has been 2AT, Second Amendment Talk. I'm Daniel Sanders for Rod Burks. Thanks for tuning in, everybody.
Yeah.